Welcome back to Seeing Wonder, and on this episode of Design Review, we have Metroid Dread. It's a fantastic game, and it also just has some fantastic design work in it, not the least of which is Samus's new suit design. I think they did a really great job with this. It has all the major elements from classic, iconic design for Samus we've seen in previous games, but overall, the design is a pretty dramatic departure from what we've seen in the past. Even just starting with the colors, with the introduction of this blue color and this heavy use of it throughout the suit. It looks great in combination with the color red they've chosen for the helmet and the chest. Overall, the shape of the suit captures the form of Samus's body more than we've seen in the past. A lot of the previous designs get pretty bulky. When you upgrade the suit in this game, the proportions become even more similar to previous Samus designs. The other suits are pretty fantastic as well. But I just wanted to focus on this suit. I particularly love this design and just the different direction they took. She is sleeker in this game, but she still does have these kind of larger shoulder armor pieces, which are pretty iconic for Samus. And the chest armor section here, along with the helmet. And then, of course, the arm cannon. So these are all kind of classic elements for Samus. But they've all been redesigned and reimagined in a pretty interesting way. For this suit, they've introduced this kind of sinewy texture that we see all over the place. It gives this kind of organic feel to it, like the suit is made of muscle fiber or something similar like that. It feels like maybe it's a little bit influenced by the Metroid Fusion suit, which had a very organic feel. It didn't use this kind of sinewy texture, but you could tell they were going for something more alien and more organic. So since this is supposed to be the direct sequel to Metroid Fusion, it's like the suit is a combination of the classic Samus elements, but also this new organic tissue running throughout the suit. It looks cool, but I think the texture is maybe a little bit overdone. To me, it's a little bit distracting and maybe even slightly messy. But my favorite elements are definitely more of the kind of hard surface parts. Overall, I think the helmet redesign is pretty great, and I love this redesign of the visor. The sharper angles just feel more aggressive and a little more dynamic than what we've seen before in the past. I'm not the biggest fan of these openings on each side. They almost look like the sides of a mouth or gills or something like that. So maybe it's just building on that organic feel of the rest of the suit, but aesthetically it just feels a little bit strange to me. Overall, the helmet looks super cool, but the main criticism I have for it is it just looks a little too small. That was one thing I noticed about the new character redesign right from the beginning, is that the head just looks too small. It just doesn't look like Samus's head would naturally fit within the size of the helmet. Some of the artwork we've seen for Samus before, the helmet definitely has a larger proportion. And this cool illustration I found for Super Metroid that shows how Samus fits within the suit. It shows a character that has much more kind of believable and convincing proportions. But here it just feels like her head would have to be so small compared to the rest of her body in order to fit within the helmet. And the proportions just feel off. I love the redesign of the chest armor piece. I think they did a really great job designing this. All of these details, these sort of panel lines look super cool in here. And then this cool shape for this piece in the middle is really great. Feels really sci-fi and feels definitely appropriate for something in this world. And I really like these glowing green lights on either side. They look like eyes and they make it feel like this chest piece is the face of an armored beast. Another thing I really appreciate about the design is this use of more white and smooth space in the midsection, at the waist and at the thighs. It's always nice to have some relief from the highly detailed areas, like in the chest and shoulders and in the feet as well. So the white space here just helps make things feel more balanced. There's a frequent use of circles. We have the rounded shoulder pieces, of course, and then within that there's these circular details on the front and on the side. There's a circle detail on the palm of Samus's hand as well. Feels a little bit awkward, especially how it looks like it sticks out, has some thickness to it, which would make things a little weird to kind of use your hand and grab onto objects. And there's a circle on the back of her hand, which I think is much more effective and just looks cooler. I think in previous Samus designs, there's usually a circle detail on her palm. And then on her gun, there's this oval shape instead of a circle. which I find a little bit strange that they didn't go with a circle there. I guess, they're treating the gun a little bit differently, so it's a slightly different shape, but to me that sticks out a little bit. And then as for the gun, it's a pretty great design as well. Sleeker than what we've seen with previous arm cannons from Samus, and some really nice sci-fi details within it. Some nice shapes throughout. And the use of these glowing lights is pretty cool too. Just makes it feel like there's all this energy and power contained within the cannon. There's also this nice detail along the bottom, along the forearm, which I really like the shape of this. It has this cool kind of, I don't know if it's venting or some sort of slots in the bottom. But yeah, nice detail to add to this design. The back of her suit has some really cool details too. These openings in the back of her helmet are a nice touch. Looks like venting or something like that. More use of circles, including on this kind of jetpack piece here. They don't draw a lot of attention to this jetpack, but if you look closely in some of the cutscenes, you can see these thrusters firing off as Samus is stopping on a dime or accelerating forward. There's also these cool shapes on her spine here, starting off with these hexagon shapes here, and then ending with a little bit of a different shape for her tailbone. And this is a good angle to see the layering of these different elements. We have this more hard surface chest piece in red there, and then the flexible white kind of base layer, the form-fitting layer, and then the blue sinew in between. So you see how they're kind of interacting with each other, and they each have their own unique characteristics. Use of circles in the boots as well. And this brings me down to maybe my favorite part of the suit, which are her boots. May sound silly, but I just love these boots. Some really nice shapes here, and just lots of nice details throughout the boots. But what I love most is this piece in front of the ankle here, and how whenever Samus moves or bends her ankle, this piece articulates and moves out of the way and allows her to walk and run freely or crouch down like this. It's the only part of the suit design that has this kind of mechanical feel, where it's almost like a piece of a machinery or something you might see in a mech. So there's almost like this transforming characteristic to it. It just has this cool sci-fi feel. And the way this piece separates, it creates this nice layering effect with this upper portion of the boot that also has a similar shape to it. And when she stands up straight, this piece kind of transforms back into place and fits perfectly within the rest of the parts of the boot. So for me, that movement feels really satisfying. It's interesting, in some of the production art, this piece actually does bend and twist as Samus moves her ankle, and it doesn't articulate the way it does in-game. So it just looks weird that the rest of the boot kind of stays rigid and in place, but only one part of it flexes and stretches. It feels like the characteristics of the material are a bit inconsistent. So I'm glad they went with the moving articulated feature for that piece. And to me, it just looks super cool. The boots also feel like they have some weight to them. They don't conform to Samus's body the way other parts of the suit do. So it just helps kind of ground the overall design and give some weight to the feet and act as a little bit of a counterbalance to all the weight she's got in the top part of her body, like her shoulders and her chest plate, so she doesn't feel too top heavy. So overall, I just love these boots. And whenever there was a cutscene, I was paying attention to the boots. And while it's not quite as cool as Samus's shoes, the gunship in this game also has a pretty nice design. This is a shot of it from the beginning of the game where there's a flashback on what happened previously in the story. And so it's supposed to be the gunship from Metroid Fusion, but it's gone through a bit of a redesign. It had much more of an elongated shape in the artwork for Metroid Fusion. And the version we see here is shorter and just has a much sleeker and more refined design, in my opinion. Has a nice silhouette when you see it straight on from the front. Just super clear what shape it takes. And I really like these articulated ends of the wings and how they rock back and forth at this pivot point here. I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be, but it looks cool and it adds kind of a distinctive feature for this ship. And these lights along the edge of each fin is a nice touch, along with the cockpit window and the other lights, a nice way to help track the ship through the darkness of space. And of course, with all previous Metroid gunships, we've got this cockpit window that's reminiscent of the visor in Samus's helmet. And in fact, previous gunships almost look like a gigantic version of Samus's helmet. So it's become kind of an iconic aspect of every gunship that it has a visor like this. And the shape they have for it here looks pretty cool. I like how the landing gear has all these kind of cool, unique parts that that unfold. There's also these compartments here that house the landing gear that's in the tips of the wings. So that's kind of a cool idea as well. A lot of really great panel line details, some cool sci-fi patterns. There's a nice variety and rhythm to them where they don't get too dense at any one point, and then they just don't distract from the overall shape of the ship, which is always good. Even the cockpit window has some nice line work details here. The front edge of these wings is really interesting too. It's subtle and it doesn't break up the overall form, but it's almost like the top layer is kind of peeled back a little bit here. And it looks like maybe there's an intake along the front of the wing there as well. And also in the tradition of Metroid gunships, looking a bit like Samus's helmet, the front of this is almost looking like a face, the visor being the eyes, and then it's almost like these nostrils here, and we got sort of a nose or a beak. But I'm always seeing faces in designs. There's this really interesting arc piece at the back with these almost like spokes or fins on it. Looks a bit strange at first, but I really like it. It's kind of this contrasting element, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it makes this ship look more unique. And I like how it also brings some focus and attention to the engine at the center of this arc. Getting a better shot of the landing gear here, and I like when they more or less resolve these mechanical parts and make it look believable. The one thing that's a bit disappointing, there's no indication of how Samus gets into the ship. In other Metroid games, there was something really satisfying about jumping on top of the ship in order to enter it. But in this game, we don't have anything like that. There's no hatch on top. In Metroid Fusion, when Samus walked underneath the ship, there was sort of this force field that would kind of pick her up and carry her into the ship. But here, we're never really shown how Samus gets into the ship. And it's only in cutscenes when Samus enters or exits. So I really like with this ship how you can pretty easily read the overall design. It only takes just a few camera angles and you know just what the shape of this ship is like. But then within that, there's tons of great detail. Really nice design overall. And one last thing I wanted to draw some attention to that I thought had a great design are the save stations in Metroid Dread. You see these stations in these rooms many, many times in the game, but every time I just love seeing the design of them. They have this cool fixture in the ceiling that's directly above the save station, and these cool rings pop out of the floor. Sam stands inside of them, and the design of these statues in the corners is just really awesome. They look like they're kind of covered in this mechanical Chozo armor that we see in other characters in the game. Cool concept as well. It looks like their arms are propping up the ceiling. And when you get a view of the full room here, you can see subtly in the foreground the faces of two more Chozo statues, giving you the indication that there are 4 of these statues in each corner of this room. And I like how the statues and the ceiling fixture and all these elements are kind of working together to make the save station very much the center and the focus of this entire room. So I liked how they made this really cool design for a room that you're going to be seeing many times throughout the game. This game had a lot of really great sci-fi design in it. I really appreciated this fresh take on the Metroid series, and I love this reinterpretation of Samus. And overall, the creators just came up with a really cool sci-fi aesthetic. I hope you enjoyed this sample of the design work in Metroid Dread. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Seeing Wonder.